A single steel door. 23 hours locked inside. No handshakes. No final meals cooked at home. This is not a movie, this is real life on Texas death row. Before we go inside, do me a favor. Subscribe now, because once this door shuts, most people can't handle what comes next. What you're about to hear is documented, verified, and happening right now inside one of the most feared prisons in America. This is life inside the Allen B. Polunsky Unit. The drive to the prison is quiet in a way that feels unnatural. Trees line the road outside Huntsville, Texas, their branches stretching overhead like they're trying to block what lies ahead. There's no dramatic skyline, no warning sign announcing the reality behind the concrete walls. Just a turn off the highway, a stretch of asphalt, and then it appears, low, wide, and suffocating. The Allen B. Polunsky Unit. This is where Texas sends men to wait for death. Officially, it's called a maximum security correctional facility, operated by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Unofficially, among inmates and officers alike, it's known as the end of the line. Every man housed here has been sentenced to death by the state of Texas. There are no release dates, no parole hearings, no second chances, only appeals, delays, and the slow ticking of a clock that never stops. The Polunsky Unit replaced the Ellis Unit as the home of Texas death row in the late 1990s, and from the moment it opened, it was designed with one purpose: isolation. Unlike older death row blocks where inmates could interact, Polunsky was built to keep human contact to an absolute minimum. Administrators learned from past uprisings and lawsuits. The solution was simple: cut prisoners off from one another and from the outside world. Each inmate lives alone in a concrete cell roughly the size of a walk-in closet. Solid steel doors. Narrow food slots. A small reinforced window that lets in just enough light to remind you that time is still moving outside, even if it doesn't feel like it inside. The men here spend approximately 23 hours a day locked inside those cells. 1 hour is allotted for recreation, usually in a cage barely larger than the cell itself. No yard. No grass. Just metal fencing and sky. Some days, even that hour disappears due to lockdowns, staff shortages, or security concerns. This is not temporary confinement. This is decades. Many inmates arrive at Polunsky in their 20s or 30s and remain until their execution date, or until they die of natural causes. Some have been here longer than most correctional officers have worked in the entire prison system. The walls absorb voices. The floors remember footsteps. And every cell holds a man who knows exactly how his story is supposed to end. But the most disturbing part isn't the physical structure. It's the silence. There are no loud communal areas. No echoing chatter from cell blocks. Conversations, when they happen, are shouted through cracks in doors or whispered during rare medical visits. Some inmates go days without speaking a single word out loud. Human interaction becomes something you ration, like food or water. Correctional officers at Polunsky are trained differently from those at other units. They're taught emotional distance first. You don't get close. You don't ask questions. You don't learn details about the men behind the doors. Because once you do, the job becomes heavier, and here weight breaks people. The prison sits just miles from the city of Huntsville, home to Sam Houston State University and the Texas Prison Museum. Tourists walk downtown streets, eat lunch, take photos, often unaware that less than 15 minutes away, men are counting the days until the state takes their lives. Inside Polunsky, time doesn't flow normally. It stretches. Minutes crawl. Years blur together. Holidays come and go unnoticed. Birthdays pass without acknowledgement. Even news from the outside world arrives filtered and delayed, if it arrives at all. And yet, despite the isolation, despite the concrete and steel, something unexpected happens to the men inside these cells. They adapt. Some begin reading obsessively, law books, religious texts, dictionaries, anything to exercise their minds. Others develop strict routines. Push-ups at dawn, pacing steps measured precisely from wall to wall, writing letters that may never be answered. A few descend into complete silence, choosing to stop engaging altogether as a form of self-protection. Because on Texas death row, hope is dangerous. Hope makes you count the days. Hope makes you imagine freedom. And imagining freedom inside Polunsky can break a man faster than the sentence itself. This is only the beginning. The first thing you notice inside a Texas death row cell is not what you see. It's what you don't hear. No televisions playing in the background. No conversations drifting through the air. No doors opening and closing at random. The silence at the Allen B. Polunsky Unit isn't peaceful. It's controlled. Engineered. Enforced. A standard death row cell measures roughly 60 square feet. Concrete walls on all four sides. A concrete slab bed molded directly into the wall, topped with a thin, fire-retardant mattress. A stainless steel toilet and sink combination welded into the corner. Above it all, fluorescent lights that never truly turn off. At night they dim, but darkness is never allowed. The door is solid steel with a narrow rectangular window reinforced with thick plexiglass. That window is the inmate's only connection to the outside hallway. Meals slide through a slot near the bottom. Medication passes through that same opening. Handcuffs are applied through it too, one wrist at a time. Every morning starts the same way. Around 3:30 a.m. before the sun rises, the lights brighten slightly. Boots echo down the corridor in slow, deliberate steps. Guards begin count, visually confirming that every inmate is alive. No talking. No response required. Just eyes open, movement detected, existence confirmed. For some men this is the moment reality hits hardest. Another day survived. Another day closer. Breakfast arrives early. Trays pushed through the slot without ceremony. Powdered eggs. A biscuit. Sometimes oatmeal. Sometimes beans. Coffee that tastes more like warm water. Inmates eat alone, seated on their beds or standing because there's no table. If you're lucky, you've learned how to eat slowly, to make the meal last longer than it should. After breakfast, the door closes again and time becomes meaningless. There are no clocks in the cells. Inmates learn to tell time by routine, by sounds in the hallway, by the faint shift of light coming through the window. Some scratch tally marks into notebooks. Others count footsteps of guards. A few refuse to track time at all, believing it makes the wait more bearable. Books are lifelines here. Most death row inmates read obsessively. Legal documents stack up in boxes under beds. Appeals paperwork grows into towers of paper. Motions, denials, rehearings, final rulings. The law becomes both hope and torment. One paragraph can keep a man alive for years. One signature can end everything. Mail is another ritual. Letters arrive inconsistently. Some inmates receive weekly updates from family members clinging to connection. Others receive nothing. No letters, no calls, no visitors. Over time, many stop checking altogether. Expectation becomes a form of pain. Around midday, lunch arrives. Another tray. Another silent transaction. Guards rarely speak unless necessary. Death row officers are trained to remain emotionally neutral. Conversations invite humanity, and humanity invites doubt. For 1 hour, on good days the cell door opens. Recreation on Texas death row doesn't mean what most people imagine. There's no yard, no basketball, no weight bench. Inmates are escorted in restraints to an outdoor cage barely larger than their cell. Chain link fencing on all sides. Concrete floor. Sky overhead. Some men walk in circles. Some stretch. Some simply stand and stare upward, letting sunlight touch their faces for the first time in days. That hour is the only moment many feel real again. When it ends, the cuffs go back on and the door shuts. The other 23 hours pass slowly. Men talk to themselves. Replay memories. Argue with ghosts. Some hear voices. Some create strict mental schedules to avoid unraveling. Push-ups every hour. Reading quotas. Writing letters that may never be sent. Night is the hardest. As the lights dim, the silence grows heavier. This is when thoughts become loud. Regret. Anger. Fear. Some inmates relive their crimes over and over. Others focus on appeals still pending. A few imagine execution day, what they'll say, whether anyone will watch, how it will feel when the drugs enter their veins at the Huntsville unit, located just miles away. Sleep comes in fragments. Every sound feels amplified. A distant shout. A guard's radio. A metal door slamming somewhere down the row. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, a cell light turns on, and someone disappears. No announcement. No explanation. On death row, when a man leaves his cell after midnight, everyone knows why. The next morning, count continues as if nothing happened. That's the rhythm of life inside Polunsky. Day after identical day. Year after year. The punishment isn't just death, it's the waiting. And yet, within this isolation, bonds form in strange ways. If the isolation inside the Allen B. Polunsky unit were complete, most men wouldn't survive it. The human mind was never designed for total silence, total separation, total removal from touch. And yet, the prison was built to achieve exactly that. What the designers didn't fully anticipate was human adaptation. Because even on death row, men find ways to connect. Communication inside Polunsky doesn't look like conversation. It's fragmented, improvised, risky. But it exists, and for many inmates, it's the only thing keeping them sane. The most common method is called fishing. Inmates tear thin strips from bedsheets, clothing seams, or towel fibers and twist them together into long cords. At the end, they tie small weighted objects, soap, paper, sometimes toothpaste hardened into shape. When guards aren't nearby, these lines are slid under cell doors and pushed down the tier. Another inmate hooks it with his own line. Messages, handwritten notes, or small objects are transferred silently along the floor. Fishing is strictly prohibited. If caught, inmates lose privileges. Sometimes recreation. Sometimes mail. But the risk is worth it. A single note, "You still alive?" can mean everything after days of silence. Then there's shouting. Cells aren't soundproof. Voices echo through ventilation shafts and cracks in the structure. Inmates learn exactly how loud to speak, exactly which angle carries sound without alerting officers. Conversations are slow, broken by pauses, passed down the row one sentence at a time. "You good? Still here. Appeal denied today. Sorry, brother." These aren't friendships in the traditional sense. No faces. No handshakes. Just voices and shared reality. But on death row, that's enough. Some inmates form informal mentorships. Older prisoners guide newer arrivals, explaining routines, warning signs, how to mentally survive the first year. Because the first year is the most dangerous. That's when suicides are most likely. That's when the shock hasn't worn off yet. Others turn to religion. Chaplains walk the row on scheduled days, stopping briefly at each cell. Religious services are conducted individually, through doors. No group prayer. No shared hymns. Faith becomes private and intense. Some inmates convert. Some lose belief entirely. Some cling harder than ever, believing divine justice might intervene where the legal system failed. Legal talk dominates many conversations. Appeals. Habeas petitions. New evidence. Supreme Court decisions. The law is discussed the way sports are discussed outside. Obsessively, passionately, with hope and superstition mixed together. One favorable ruling in another case can spark optimism across the entire row. One execution can crush it instantly. When an execution date is set, everyone knows. Not officially. Not announced. But word spreads fast. Through fishing lines. Through whispers. Through changes in routine. Increased guard presence. Chaplain visits becoming more frequent. Medical staff appearing more often. The man with the date often goes quiet. Some stop talking entirely. Others become unusually calm. A few become angry, lashing out verbally, filing grievances, refusing meals. Everyone handles it differently. There's no correct way to prepare for your own death. The night before an execution is the heaviest. Inmates stay awake. Some pray. Some talk through the walls until morning. Some say goodbye without saying the word goodbye. When the execution team arrives before dawn, the entire unit feels it. Doors open. Shackles clink. Footsteps move down the row. Then one cell stays empty. No memorial. No announcement. Breakfast trays still slide through slots. Count still happens. Life continues. New inmates arrive eventually. Younger. Confused. Terrified. The cycle repeats. And through it all, the voices continue, through concrete, through steel, through decades. Because on Texas death row, connection isn't comfort. It's survival. There is no announcement system on Texas death row. No loudspeaker. No formal notification to the unit. And yet, when the state of Texas sets an execution date, the Allen B. Polunsky Unit seems to sense it. The change starts quietly. A man is called to the door and handcuffed for what's listed as a routine meeting. Legal visit. Medical check. Chaplain consult. Nothing unusual, except everyone knows what those visits mean when they start happening more often. Especially when they happen close together. Execution dates are usually scheduled weeks or months in advance, but the final days are the most intense. Appeals are filed at the last possible moment. Motions are denied late at night. Phones ring in attorneys' offices until dawn. For the inmate, hope exists in tiny, fragile windows. Temporary stays, emergency hearings, last-minute evidence. Every hour matters. Inside the cell, time slows even more than usual. The condemned man is placed under increased observation. His meals may change slightly. He may be offered spiritual counseling more frequently. Some are asked about their final statement, their witnesses, their last meal. Texas no longer allows families to bring food from home. The last meal must be chosen from a pre-approved list. For some inmates, this decision becomes deeply symbolic. Steak. Fried chicken. Ice cream. Others refuse a last meal entirely, not out of protest but exhaustion. After years of waiting, even food loses meaning. Word spreads through the row. Fishing lines carry updates. Whispers pass through vents. Other inmates offer quiet encouragement, prayers, or simply presence. No one wants to die alone, even if that company exists only as a voice through concrete. The night before the execution is sleepless. Lights remain dim but visible. Guards make more frequent rounds. The condemned man is often moved to a different cell closer to the front of the unit, a logistical decision that carries psychological weight. The cell is cleaner, brighter. It feels temporary, and that makes it worse. Some inmates write letters through the night. Apologies, explanations, confessions, goodbyes. Others destroy personal items, photos, notes, drawings, so they won't be found after. A few choose to leave everything behind untouched, as if refusing to participate in the process at all. At Polunsky, executions typically happen after midnight, in the early hours of the morning. Around 6 p.m. the previous evening, final appeals are usually resolved. When the courts deny the last motion, the waiting ends. There is no celebration, no reaction, just silence. Around midnight, the execution team arrives. Officers open the cell. The inmate is restrained, hands, waist, legs. He is given the opportunity to make phone calls. Final prayers. Final words. Then comes the walk. The distance from Polunsky to the Huntsville unit is short by car, but it feels infinite. Inside the transport vehicle, the inmate is alone with his thoughts. Some stare straight ahead. Some pray. Some shake uncontrollably. Others appear eerily calm, as if the waiting drained them of all fear long ago. At the Huntsville unit, witnesses gather behind glass. Victims' families. Media representatives. Spiritual advisors. The gurney waits under bright lights. Medical staff prepare syringes filled with clear liquid, drugs designed to sedate, paralyze, and stop the heart. The inmate is strapped down. A microphone is placed near his mouth. This is his final opportunity to speak. Some offer apologies. Some proclaim innocence. Some address their families. Some remain silent. When the warden gives the signal, the drugs flow. Witnesses watch as consciousness fades. Breathing slows. Then stops. A doctor checks for vital signs. A time of death is recorded. It's over. By the time dawn breaks, the transport vehicle is already on its way back to Polunsky. One cell will remain empty. Another inmate will eventually move into it. And life on death row continues. When an execution happens, the most obvious change is the empty cell. But the real impact settles into the men who remain inside the Allen B. Polunsky unit long after the transport vehicle leaves. Executions don't bring closure to death row. They bring reminders. The morning after an execution, count proceeds as usual. Guards walk the tier. Eyes open. Movement detected. Doors stay closed. Breakfast trays slide through slots with the same mechanical precision as always. There is no moment of silence. No acknowledgement that someone is gone. But everyone knows. The inmate who lived 2 cells down no longer shouts good morning. The voice that used to echo through the vents at night is gone. Conversations pause when someone forgets. When they send a fishing line toward a cell that no longer responds. For some inmates, this loss hits harder than expected. It forces them to imagine their own execution in detail. The walk. The straps. The witnesses. The silence afterward. Watching others die becomes a rehearsal you never asked for. Over time, this repeated exposure changes people. Mental health staff make regular rounds on death row, but their presence is limited. Conversations happen through doors. Sessions are brief. Treatment options are constrained by security. Medications are prescribed, but many inmates refuse them, afraid of losing mental clarity during appeals. Depression is constant. Anxiety is universal. Some inmates develop obsessive behaviors, counting steps, tapping walls, repeating prayers endlessly. Others withdraw completely, choosing isolation within isolation. They stop talking, stop fishing, stop reading. Their cells become quiet in a way that alarms officers. Suicide watch is common on death row. When an inmate shows signs of self-harm, he may be placed in an observation cell, stripped of personal items, watched continuously, sometimes under bright lights 24 hours a day. The intention is safety. The effect often feels like punishment layered on top of despair. Long-term confinement reshapes identity. Men who have been on death row for decades speak differently, move differently, think differently. Many entered Polunsky as young adults. They age inside concrete walls, their only mirrors reflecting years of stress and confinement. Some lose contact with family entirely. Parents die. Children grow up. Marriages end. Life outside moves on without them. Some inmates receive stays of execution after decades on death row. Their sentences are reduced to life without parole. When this happens, they are transferred out of Polunsky to other units where human contact exists, where group recreation and communal meals feel overwhelming at first. For many, the transition is traumatic. After years of silence, noise becomes unbearable. Crowds trigger panic. Simple decisions feel impossible. Death row strips away autonomy so completely that regaining it feels foreign. Others never leave. They watch new inmates arrive, confused, terrified, still fighting the shock. The veterans recognize the signs immediately. The pacing, the sleeplessness, the questions. Sometimes they offer guidance. Sometimes they stay silent, knowing there are no words that truly help. And yet, despite everything, moments of humanity survive. Inmates celebrate each other's legal victories, however small. A granted hearing, a new attorney, a stay of execution. These moments ripple through the row, briefly lifting the weight of inevitability. Some men create art, drawings, poetry, music written in their heads. Creativity becomes resistance. Proof that the system hasn't erased them completely. Faith evolves. Some lose it. Some deepen it. Some replace religion with philosophy, focusing on acceptance rather than hope. Because hope on death row can be dangerous. The hardest part isn't dying. It's watching others die while you continue to wake up. Every story about Texas death row focuses on the men inside the cells. But there is another group living within the same walls, one that goes home at night, yet never truly leaves the Allen B. Polunsky Unit behind. The correctional officers. Working death row is not considered a promotion. It's an assignment. One many officers try to avoid, and others accept only because of seniority rules or staffing shortages. Those who stay do so for practical reasons, pay, stability, routine, or because leaving feels like abandoning something they've grown used to carrying. Officers at Polunsky are trained differently from the start. Emotional distance is emphasized above all else. You don't ask inmates about their cases. You don't discuss executions. You don't react to final statements or breakdowns. The uniform isn't just authority, it's armor. Because once you see condemned men as people, the job becomes unbearable. Most officers remember their first execution. Even those who weren't part of the escort detail feel it. The unit is quieter, tighter. Every movement is deliberate. Radios stay low. Orders are short. Everyone knows what's happening even if no one says it out loud. Some officers volunteer for execution duty. Others are assigned. No one is immune to it. The execution team rehearses procedures repeatedly. Every step is planned. Every contingency mapped out. Emotion has no place in the process. The goal is efficiency, control, finality. But afterward, something lingers. Officers return to Polunsky hours later, back to regular duty. Count, meals, door checks. They walk past cells where men know exactly what just happened, sometimes to someone they spoke to the night before. The officer isn't allowed to acknowledge it. Neither is the inmate. This unspoken agreement, the silence, is one of the most psychologically damaging aspects of the job. Veteran officers develop coping mechanisms. Some rely on dark humor. Others detach completely. A few turn to alcohol after shifts. Many keep their work lives separate from their families, unable to explain what they see without reliving it. Sleep is difficult. Night shift officers patrol death row while most of the world rests. The halls are dim. Radios crackle softly. Every sound feels louder at 3 a.m. Some officers swear the building feels heavier after executions, as if the walls themselves remember. Younger officers struggle the most. They arrive with training manuals and expectations. Then reality sets in. Inmates call them by name. Remember details about their lives. Ask questions that cut too close. About family, about faith, about whether the officer believes in what he's doing. Most officers refuse to answer. Not because they don't care, but because caring is dangerous. There are moments, however, when the system cracks. Medical emergencies. Mental health breakdowns. Inmates sobbing uncontrollably after appeals are denied. Officers are human first, policy second. But policy always wins. Doors stay closed. Procedures are followed. Help is limited by protocol. Some officers request transfers after a few years. Others stay decades. They age alongside the inmates. Watch hair turn gray. Watch bodies slow down. Watch men who once shouted angrily now speak softly, resigned. And then there are officers who leave the job entirely. Burnout is common. PTSD is rarely discussed openly. Counseling is available, but stigma keeps many from using it. The culture values toughness, emotional restraint, moving on. But you don't truly move on from death row. Officers carry faces with them. Voices. Final words spoken into microphones. The sound of shackles. The moment a cell goes quiet forever. They may not be the ones sentenced to die, but they are witnesses to death as routine. And that changes a person. Life on Texas death row doesn't end with an execution. It echoes. It stays behind in empty cells, in guarded silence, in men still waiting. The Allen B. Polunsky Unit was built to hold bodies, but what it truly contains are years of fear, hope, regret, and endurance stacked one day at a time. Some men here will die by the state's hand. Some will die of old age. A few will leave after decades, forever changed. And every night, steel doors still close, lights still dim, and voices still travel through concrete, proving that even in the most controlled place on earth, humanity never fully disappears. If this story made you think, disturbed you, or changed how you see justice, make sure you're subscribed. More true prison stories are coming, stories the walls were never meant to let out. Because once you understand death row, you never hear silence the same way again.